I'm going to kind of jump right into the presentation here. And the topic I'm going to be presenting today is on using work centers for mobile record creation. So really what this is we're trying to look at other ways to leverage what's available in work centers. And I'll go through that in a few moments here. I've got some slides specifically devoted to that. But trying to find other ways to leverage what IBM's produced with these work centers. And the one that we've chosen for this particular topic is mobile record creation using an incident requester type screen. So before I get too far, Marta already went through a bit of my background, so I won't cover that again. But I do want to mention my last bullet on that slide that, one of the things that I'm pretty passionate about is just finding ways to make Maximo more usable and more valuable to your business. And I think what we see with work centers right now exactly lines up with that. I think there's a lot of really cool features that are going to become available as that product gets a little bit more mature, as more roles and functionality is released. And again, I hope you'll find that the presentation today kind of shows some of that. In terms of the agenda, as I mentioned, I will cover a little bit on Work Center background, just if you're not that familiar with what is a Maximo Work Center, I'll give you a bit of that. On Tracks, we've done a webcast in the past specifically devoted to Work Centers. I think you'd find that on our YouTube channel. So I'm not going to go through all of the basics. Again, I want to focus on the incident creation use case. But I will also discuss, why did we pick mobile incident creation? And there was a couple good reasons for that. Again, we're trying to demonstrate what work centers can do, and we chose that one because we thought it kind of fit well, and I'll go through that. And then there's some other options. I just want people to be aware that although I'm demonstrating that you can, using a work center, create an incident in a mobile environment, there are other options to do that. So, and each of those options, of course, has pros and cons, and I've kind of listed those out. So again, I'm really trying to demonstrate what work centers can do for you. There are, as with anything in Maximo, there's often many ways to accomplish the same goal. And then last but not least, I'll go through a bit of a live demonstration. I'll kind of open up my phone and show you guys that. I've got a little emulator that allows you to see what I'm seeing on my phone through just like an AirPlay type system, and go through creating an incident and then maybe log into Maximo and just show what it does on the other side. And then after that, as Marta mentioned, there'll be a Q&A session, and it sounds like you have to raise your hand using the controls on your screen to be able to ask that question. Okay, to start off with work centers, what are these? If you're relatively new to work centers, they were introduced in Maximo 7.6.0.5. That's when work centers were first created. There are no additional licenses required, which is, I think, one of the cool things about this and one of the reasons we've looked at this for incident creation as well. You can, as long as you're on 7.6.05 or later, you can leverage these work centers and you require no additional licensing. Of course, you would still require an underlying license. So if, for example, your work center is touching screens that you wouldn't otherwise have access to at Maximo, well, that's an issue. But assuming that what you would do in a work center is the same as what you would do in classic Maximo, as they call it, there is no additional licensing required to use the work center itself. They've been released incrementally, and what we're finding with every feature pack, there's incremental capabilities, features, functions. The product essentially is getting a lot more mature, and I wouldn't be surprised if we fast forward 2 years from now that the vast majority of users, maybe not planners, buyers, people who have a very heavy role in Maximo, but I wouldn't be surprised if the bulk of users are interacting with Maximo via Work Center. I think that's kind of directionally where IBM is going. They're trying to find more modern ways, less kind of clunky tabular forms and more kind of modern UIs. And I think what we're going to find over time that more people are going to do that. It's accessed via a separate link. And again, you get it already with 7.6.05. There's some security considerations to enable it, but assuming it's all been enabled, basically your normal URL that gets you into Maximo likely ends with Maximo at the end. If you were to put a -X, that's going to get you into your work centers, again, assuming everything's set up. Those work centers use a modern responsive web design. What that really, the modern part, I hope I'll demonstrate that and you'll see it. But the responsive part, what that really means is you can open it up on a laptop, on a monitor, on a phone, on an iPhone, an Android device, quarter VGA device, whatever it is, and the application itself will resize and as best as it can, kind of display the screen in the most usable format possible. You'll even see that if you turn your phone sideways, for example, the screen kind of changes the configuration to better use the real estate that it has available. So it's not a matter of having to program, hey, here's all the different devices my company uses. It's modern, it knows, it kind of resizes accordingly. It is KPI driven. It does have a built-in integration with Watson. There's a Maximo Asset Health Insights, or MAHI as a lot of people refer to it as. It's a prime example of that. It has, very much or quite a bit of integration with Watson and some of the analytical tools. But these work centers have been built with that in mind so that you can integrate with Watson and do a lot more of the analytics. And there's even a business analyst role, which I'll talk about here in a second, that has some of that. And all of these work centers, I say all the majority that would be exposed to end users, follow a role-based approach. And this slide here just kind of shows the different roles that were released. So in the initial release, which was 7605, the first three there were pushed out. So a technician work center, exactly what it sounds like, being able to actually take a work order, complete your work order, create a work order. There's a supervisor work center for things like approvals and reviews, and then a business analyst, which is a little bit more around kind of analytics and data mining. Since then, there's been a couple additional ones, one in 7606 and one in 7608. So 7606 saw the self-service requester added to that portfolio. And then in 7608, we added the inspection work center, which allows almost like a checklist-based look and feel where you can take like a work order and, maybe you have a DOT inspection or some type of job plan or procedure that requires someone to, systematically check off, here's everything I've done. It's a very elegant way to do that using that inspection work center. So I want to just get into a couple important details here. First of all, as I already mentioned, I'm just really trying to show you what work centers can be used for over and above kind of the out-of-the-box screens that are shipped with Maximo. And what I'm doing with that is I'm creating an incident, and I've built an incident requester work center. There's a couple important things. There is no out-of-the-box incident requester work center. So again, this is a configured application. So we've leveraged the tools that we have available with work centers, but we have configured this application. So if you go, searching for the incident requester work center, you're not going to find it. But again, it's a relatively straightforward configuration to do what we've done. And if you're interested in some of those details, I'll put my kind of name and contact information up at the end, and we can certainly get into that. I want to point out again, there's no additional licenses required to use work centers, but again, you need that underlying license. So what I've done in this case is I've built my incident work center on top of Maximo Oil and Gas's incident application. There's also the same application available in Maximo HSE. So in the case that I'm demonstrating here, to be able to do exactly what I did, you would need to have Maximo Oil and Gas or Maximo HSE. So again, if you have those, then you're off to the races. If you don't, again, the purpose of this is really just to show you what work centers can do. So maybe you use a service request to capture this information. Maybe you've cloned or duplicated that application, whatever. The point is, I've picked that one because I think it's a pretty compelling story, and I'll go into that in a second. But you can really leverage, what I'm doing here for other use cases depending on your business and depending on your licenses. But to be able to do this, assuming you had incidents, you would be able to do exactly what I'm doing here. So why did we pick mobile incidents, right? I mean, we have these work centers. No one's, the use cases that you read about aren't really about mobile deployment of them. But we picked mobile incidents for a few reasons. One is health, safety, and environment. I don't know all the companies that are represented on this call, but I can almost guarantee you it's a very important part of your organization. If I opened up your annual report or mission statement or what have you, I'm probably very quickly going to find the words, health, safety, or environment somewhere in that. So we live in a very safety-conscious culture. So we thought, hey, this is something that pretty much every business can leverage, right? Safety is important to pretty much everybody. Second, what I'm going to do here is show you that you can identify hazards, near misses, accidents, and by doing that, there's been a lot of studies. You can go, Occupational Safety Health Association, there's a few that have kind of benchmarked that if you're identifying hazards and near misses, and then subsequently managing the root causes, like going through a root cause analysis, and then obviously correcting, performing some type of corrective action, you're going to end up with a safer work environment. And I think that's just straight logic. If you identify hazards regularly and go through an analysis of why did that hazard exist and then come up with some corrective actions, you're going to create a safer environment. So one of the keys there is getting hazards identified early, getting near misses identified. And that, again, is why we thought incident creation in a mobile device is a good use case. Third, capturing hazards and near misses as close to the source as possible provides the most accurate information. And I think you see this in some cases. Someone does identify a hazard. They don't have the means to document it immediately, like they can't use their phone or what have you. They're going to go do it later in the afternoon. Well, they get pulled away. They get busy. Maybe it never gets documented. Or maybe when they do finally get around to it, they don't have the same information. Or maybe had they had a mobile device, they could have taken a picture of the unsafe condition right at the time of identification and included that. And I'll demonstrate some of that. And then last, one of the things we thought is, hey, identifying a hazard or an incident or a near miss, it frankly should be simple enough that there's no training required, right? I mean, obviously going through some of the detailed processes around investigations and so forth, maybe that's not something you'd want to expose to the masses on a mobile device. But being able to identify a hazard or a near miss or something like that, it should be simple, and it should be simple enough that you can deploy it out to all of your resources, and there should be no additional training required. Okay, and that's kind of the key. No one really gets trained on all the applications on their smart device, right? Most of them are intuitive enough that you can use them without any detailed training. I want to point out that although I'm talking about incident creation, I recognize that there's a much larger process here, and this would feed into that process. So at the top of this diagram, really what I'm going to demonstrate is the incident identification. So again, I'm using a work center. I'm pushing that out to the masses. I'm using an incident request approach, which depending on your licensing may even be a free license. There may be no license implication to give that to everyone in your organization. But I'm dealing with the top one, identifying the incident. After that, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that happens, right? You're going to have people, maybe your HSC group, maybe it's a direct supervisor. They're going to go classify it, prioritize it, determine the severity and so forth, maybe identify the harm to people, harm to property, the environment, and all that good stuff. And then from there, it's going to potentially go into an investigation and root cause analysis. So you may have a formal investigation process or root cause analysis process. You might use SCAT or 5 Whys or whatever you might be using to, identify what the causes of that incident were. And then obviously the next one, move into an action identification, right? So identify, here's the actions we're going to do to prevent this from occurring again, assign those actions, complete those actions. And then last, along the bottom there, obviously you would go through an incident closure process and of course, continuous improvement. So again, there is a detailed incident investigation, root cause analysis, action flow. I'm really focused on the top for this particular demonstration, just showing that, hey, we can deploy a work center to a device very simply and, collect all of the incidents by all of the people in our organization, so we have everybody's eyes and ears out there, and then we can, move it into the system, and then take over your regular flow with your HSC department or whoever is involved in those various steps. So before I get too far, I want to point out there's a few different ways you could do this. There's, not only a work center, but I want to point out that option one is Maximo Anywhere. So many of you are probably familiar with this, but IBM has a product that, built on the mobile-first platform called Maximo Anywhere. And Maximo Anywhere has an incident reporter application. So it allows you to go and identify and record incidents, identify hazards and safety observations, all on a mobile device, and it is a pre-packaged solution that's available. It supports both online and offline incident creation. So this is, again, a very good tool. If you look at the pros, it provides offline support, which is very beneficial if you're distributed or you have areas with limited cell phone or Wi-Fi connectivity. You could actually, still create your incidents and hazards and what have you. And then when you get back into a spot that has connectivity, the system would have stored that and then forwarded it to the server at that time. So, very, very useful if you have offline needs. It's also a packaged and supported solution by IBM. It is a modern application. It is configurable. You would see that if you ever got a demo of it. The only real con to this one is, of course, it requires additional licensing. So this is not something that you get, at no charge with a normal Maximo license. You would have to license that separately. But want to point out that there's a very good solution that's available. I'm just trying to show how work centers can be leveraged as well, and you'll see some of the pros and cons on that in a sec. Another option would be to use Maximo Everyplace, which has been around for quite some time. So Maximo Everyplace is a connected-only method of pushing screens out to mobile devices. And it would support the deployment of an application, basically the way Maximo Everyplace works, inside of the application designer, which you probably use to build your other screens and modify screens for core Maximo. You can identify and build out a Maximo Everyplace screen. It's a connected-only system, so you can't use it in an offline mode. You have to be connected, whether that's via cell tower or via Wi-Fi, but you need to be connected to your server to use it. And the interface, you can see it in the picture here. It's more similar to, I guess, classic Maximo. And frankly, I think the picture kind of tells the story of whether this is usable. I don't find it to be overly usable. If you've ever used Everyplace, it can be a bit, finicky sometimes because you have to build a screen out by pixels and then deploy it, and your screen can only consume. Like it's not, it has really no agility, and it's not responsive enough to actually resize and all that good stuff. In some cases, when you go to a select value button, it kind of kicks over to the right or looks a bit, looks a bit silly. So if you've ever played with it a bit, it's a little bit clunky, but in terms of the pros, again, no additional licenses are needed to use Maximo Everyplace. Unfortunately, the display is not responsive and not really modern, at least in my personal opinion. And of course, it only works in a connected-only environment. But if you have Maximo today, you would have access to Maximo Everyplace for no license. You could use this in a connected-only mode. And then, of course, what I'm going to demonstrate, which is a Maximo Work Center, and again, this is a custom-built incident reporting application that's been built on top of a work center. You'll find that it does use a modern user interface that is responsive to the device. If I turn my device sideways or have a large screen device, small screen device, Maximo kind of manages that. But again, it only works in a connected-only mode. So I just want to be clear on that that's a big difference between the Anywhere product and this. This is connected only. So if you have people that don't have any cell or Wi-Fi connectivity on their devices, this isn't going to work for you, or at least not today. And I say that because this is built on kind of a Google Polymer backend, backend, and you can technically provide some disconnected functionality using Polymer. However, I've yet to hear or have no reason to believe that IBM is going there. But the way it's architected today, you would have to be in a connected-only mode. And the pros, again, it's a responsive look and feel. You can leverage things like the integrated camera, and I'll show you that. No licenses needed. Again, if you have, a Maximo license, you should be good. Or in some cases, if it's a request, like an incident request or a service request, those applications don't require licenses in general. And then the cons, of course, it's connected only, right? So you can't use this in a disconnected. And it's currently a little less configurable than, say, Anywhere and some of the other solutions. It's still a relatively new product if you look at the life cycle of it being released in 7.6.05. And what you're going to find is over time, this is going to obviously improve, and there'll be more, things that we can do with the solution. It's again, a relatively new one. So with that, I'm going to jump into a brief demonstration and just kind of show you what it is. And to do that, I am going to open up my phone on my screen here. So I've just got basically a little simple application that mirrors my screen on my cell phone. And what you're looking at is I'm literally holding my cell phone. What you see is what I see on my phone. And there's a couple different ways to access it. So I've got, you can access it via a browser, which is a very common method, right? I can come and open up a browser, hit a URL, and bang, I'm going to be on my work center. And again, assuming you have connectivity. Or you can even, you'll see on my screen here in the top left, you could create a shortcut if you want to just quickly click that, and away you go. That's just kind of native functionality. I'm on an iPhone, but native functionality you can use on your device. So with the application open, I'll just kind of step you through it. I'll just log in under the user ID. And what it's going to do is open up, and currently what it's doing is now, so it's on a work center now. I mentioned earlier, like if I turn my phone sideways, it even kind of changes that responsive feel. You see the buttons on the left-hand side now. If I turn my phone back upright, the buttons kind of go along the bottom. Again, it's smart enough to be aware of what kind of real estate it has and tries to best use that real estate. It's kind of showing me on my screen here just kind of my past incidents that I've created. I can see history and so forth. But I'll go through and just start creating a new one. So along the bottom, there's a button that says New. And if I click that, it's going to say, okay, I'm submitting an incident. And again, the idea here was to make it very easy to use so that we didn't have to go train a ton of people. So we've kind of created the 4 buttons, and these can each kind of have different, screen layouts and information that you're capturing, right? So we just, and of course you can customize the buttons as we did here to say, hey, we've got an unsafe act, maybe someone dropped a banana peel on the ground. We've got an unsafe condition, which is there's a banana peel on the ground. We've got a near miss, someone almost stepped on it, and then maybe an accident where someone did slip on it. But these buttons are entirely configurable. You can, change the look and feel. That's just the ones that we chose for this particular example. In this case, I'll just maybe indicate that I've got an unsafe condition. And by clicking on that button, it kind of opens it up. And you can see along the top, it kind of shows me my simple workflow. I'm going to identify the issue, put in my details, and then submit it. And again, this is a very simple way to do it. You could, of course, add more steps along the way if you had specific information for your company that you needed to capture. In the describe the issue, I can, of course, type in there using my keyboard, but I can also use the voice to text, right? And I'll just do that here. Someone left a banana peel on the ground. So by doing that, the system obviously just recognizes my voice, puts it on there. I don't have to type it out. Again, one of the benefits of collecting this on a mobile device, and I could maybe even, add some more. We should pick it up so someone doesn't slip on it. So again, just an example that you can use the voice to text. Of course, you can still type. I can put in the incident date. That's probably something that's important. I'm going to say that happened today or yesterday. It's up to me. And you can even go so far as to put in a specific time if you wanted to capture the exact date and time of the incident. Just going to hit the next button, and then it says, do you want to add a photo or video of the issue? Yeah, and this is, again, one of the use cases, I think, as to, hey, if you got a mobile device out there, let's take a picture of it. So I'll just do that. I'll take a photo. And you'll see this is me doing my webcast. I should have hired a model for this. And I'll upload that, and it attaches it to my incident so that you'll see when I go back into Maximo, it will then have that picture associated with the record. Okay. Could have also done the same around a video. Maybe I'm, seeing an unsafe condition. Someone, we've got a contractor walking around without their PPE. You could maybe even take a video. I'll hit next from there. And then you can search your locations, and you can search by keyword, or you can leverage your hierarchy, right? So if you have your asset location hierarchy, I could say, yeah, I'm in this site, and, if I found the banana peels maybe inside the boiler room, I could go and pick that particular location. And again, it's just systematically going to drill me down from there into a specific asset or location, right? So in this case, I'm going to go right down to the reciprocating compressor just as an example. That's the lowest level of my hierarchy, so it kind of stops there. And I can go, yeah, I'm good with that one. I'm going to set my location. Now, I can also search by asset, right? So if you had a facility with a lot of assets in it, you could kind of search down the asset list. In this particular example, and I'll just show you that in the Maximo system, when I've picked that compressor, there's a one-to-one relationship between an asset, which is the compressor itself, and that location. And Maximo does what traditional Maximo would do. If there's a one-to-one, it will automatically associate the asset. So I'm going to leave it empty in this instance just to show you that functionality. So I'm going to skip defining an asset. I'll let the system do it for me. And then from there, basically it goes to a review. I can kind of double check this is what I wanted. And then if I just hit the submit incident button on the bottom, it brings me back to my kind of home screen there, shows me the most recent incident at the top, and sends it off to the server. And it's that simple. I've now captured that information. And again, these screens can be configured to collect information that's specific to you. For the purposes of this demonstration, we obviously tried to keep it fairly generic, depending on what you're looking for. So with that, what I'll do now is I'm just going to open up Maximo and just show you what the system did. Now, of course, the idea, and that's back to the process flow that I had in the slides earlier on, the idea would be that whatever your normal workflow is would pick that record up from this point forward. So maybe it goes to a supervisor or HSE or both at the same time. Maybe they go through some sort of severity analysis. And then they maybe decide on, are we going to, track and, I got the wrong page here. Or, do we need to go through some type of formal investigation process or anything like that? So, your process would pick it up from that point forward. Again, I fully recognize there's more to it than just identification. This is just showing that this is a good way to push it out to the masses. So I just built a simple results at the bottom. One should have been someone left a banana peel. Where are we here? And why don't I see this one linked? Be 1194. I show it on my screen. Let me just go find it. Oh, there it is, 1194. Let me go back to my start center. I was expecting it in my result set, but maybe it wasn't refreshed. Maybe my query doesn't pull that one in. But anyway, the incident I can see on my phone is incident number 1194. So I'll open up that particular incident, which is the one I just created. And again, this would pick up your normal workflow, but what I'll show you in here, the reported by individuals obviously filled in. On the right-hand side under classification, I've created classifications for each of those, right? So unsafe act versus unsafe condition versus near miss versus accident. And that can drive some of the questions and information that you capture along the way during that incident creation process. You'll see my summary that I put in and my detailed description, which, again, you saw me put that in using the voice-to-text feature. And then even if I scroll down, I mentioned that since my boiler room compressor had a one-to-one relationship with an asset, I didn't even need to put in the asset. Maximo used its out-of-the-box logic that said, hey, if there's a one-to-one, I'm going to assume it's for the asset and plunked it in the record for me. Down below, there's a bunch of attachments. Some of those came from my location, the four below it. So those location ones kind of copy over. You could turn that on or off if you want. But the top one is the picture that I attached to my incident. So if I click on that, you will hopefully see the picture that I took during the incident demonstration, and there it is. And again, in the real world, that would be your unsafe condition or whatever it is that you want it to send. So, again, that's the basic information we put in. The reported date, of course, fills in the incident date. I didn't choose a time. Had I put a time in, it would have filled that in for me. But it basically fills in the fields that I provided on my device. And again, this would typically get picked up automatically via your workflow or a start center or an email notification, depending on what your process is for incident management. I just wanted to really demonstrate the identification and the value in using a work center to expose that to the masses and have, all of our eyes and ears in our company finding these hazards, identifying them, and then obviously getting them to the HSE group and going through our formal root cause analysis. So with that, that's really the end of the demonstration that I have, and I'm pretty much 30 minutes on the beak. What I'll do is I'll pass it back to Marta. She can facilitate these questions, and I'll also during that time put up my contact information. So if you do ever have any questions outside of this or aren't comfortable asking your question in front of a group or just want some more information on it, by all means reach out to me. My contact information is on the screen.